in 7 years, so all my stories are bullshit.
Yeah, but you tell some great stories.
That's it. They're better when they're not real.
Yeah.
Gentlemen, how are you doing?
Doing well,
well.
Mark. How are you?
I'm doing pretty good, hanging in there. As
Got a
best as
new background today, Mark.
a new background today. You know what that is behind me there? Can you see
I
that?
can see it. It's a picture of a racetrack.
Yeah, racehorse.
Is
Yeah,
that
it's-
Secretariat?
No, close. It's a
Seattle
picture-
Slew?
Close again. It's a picture of
Affirmed.
Affirmed.
Ah,
Oh, okay.
Well, then
And you know
where's
the-
Alley Dar? Should be just about a nose back.
Ali Dar is a nose back.
Okay.
And remember that he beat Ali Dar all 3 times in the Triple Crown by a nose and neck.
Yeah.
Nose and neck and a
nose-
length and a half. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
That was Steve Cawthon. I got him to sign the picture.
Oh wow, that was when
that's
they had
cool.
3 Triple Crown winners, like in 4 or 5 years.
Correct.
Make sure to have that picture available when we have John Hardoon on to talk
I will
horse
do that,
racing.
yes. I will do that for sure.
Yeah, maybe you can get an interview with Affirmed if he's still around.
Probably, if he is around, he's probably too busy.
He's
as
really
stud.
good on TV, Andy.
Yeah, well, he's got to be what, about 40, 47, 48, something like that.
He's got a very long nose.
Well, how long do thoroughbreds live till?
I would think my 20s to 30s.
Yeah, somewhere in the 25 to 30 years.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's about right.
Yeah.
Well, except for Mr. Ed, who lives forever.
That's for sure.
I started the show out. Greg says, I get on the show. He says, hello, Mr. Ed. Me.
Wilbur.
I guess I look like a horse.
Brady, how you doing, man?
I'm good, Mark. How you been?
I'm doing real good. Good to see you.
Yeah, thank you. Good to see you.
Doing a great job on the golf previews. Appreciate that.
Thank you. Yep,
Nice.
you bet.
Yeah, I figured this was a good week to have him on because this week they're playing at Arnie's place, and these are the best players in the world getting together. And then next week it's the Players, which is like one of the funnest tournaments of
It's
the year.
the unofficial 5th major.
Yeah.
So that's a lot of fun. So figured, and then who knows, the Masters will be here, in a month?
Yeah.
Almost a month to a little over a month. Usually around April 10th or something like that.
Greg, Brady, who's this? Are you Aberg?
Yeah.
Everybody's raving about his game.
I love him, man.
Oh,
I
yeah.
really, I not only do I love his game, I love the way he acts on the course. He plays very fast, which is great.
Was he Swedish or?
Yes,
Yeah.
he's a Swede. He went to Texas Tech, and in the history of the Ben Hogan Award, which is awarded to the best college golfer of the year, in the history of the Ben Hogan Award, there's only 2 guys that have ever won it twice. One is John Rahm, and the other is Ludwig Oberg. So
Wow.
it's
Pretty impressive company.
Yeah.
What
Yeah,
do you-
I love
pretty
him.
exclusive.
What kind
Yeah.
of chance do you give him in the Masters?
I certainly don't like 8 or 10 to 1, which I'm seeing. He was 16. I grabbed him to win the PGA Championship before he won Torrey Pines a few weeks ago. I grabbed him to win the PGA Championship at 18. And the reason I did that is because Torrey Pines out in La Jolla and Quail Hollow in North Carolina,
Similar.
for me, those courses are very connected. So if he won at one, he's probably got a good shot to win at the other.
Did he
It's
play
like-
in the Masters last year?
Yeah, and that was his coming out party. He finished like 3rd or something like that.
That's right. I thought so.
Wow.
I don't have to tell you, Jim, Brady is not a chalk player, okay? He's always looking for the value,
Well,
I'll
so
tell you
am
what,
I.
though. I mean,
don't
I
like
bet
chalk either.
I bet Scotty Scheffler at the back in December. What is that? 4 months ago now, or whatever. In that 20-player tournament in the Bahamas that Tiger hosts, I bet him at plus 225, and he won for the 2nd year in a row. and the odds makers were saying he should have been minus 225.
Wow.
Yeah.
There's the Floyd Mayweathers of the world that you don't mind laying the price either.
That's a guy that's held on to the number one position or damn near it for a long time.
Yeah, he's really good. I don't think
There
he's going
are
to win
horses
this
for
week,
courses
but
and golfers for courses.
yeah.
Is Tony going to be with us, Greg? Do you know?
No,
No?
not until he'll probably be on right around the time that we say bye to Brady, probably in about 15, 20 minutes.
And Jim, are you doing the pizza show today?
Yeah, I'm going to run out of here about 11:30.
Okay.
I got to get in my car and drive over there.
Well, it's right around the
And
corner from you, isn't it?
Well, it's around the corner, but you got to deal with traffic and, so maybe sometimes 15 minutes, sometimes 20.
I
It's
hear
not
you.
That's
that
not around the
far, but
corner.
Charleston doesn't always cooperate. That's the road, Charleston.
The lights are not timed very well.
No, they're not.
All right, Jimmy's got to get out of here, guys. So let's roll right into this. Nothing formal. I just want to thank all of our viewers out there for tuning in once again. I want to remind everybody that if you haven't hit the like button, please do so. And if you haven't yet subscribed, please do so. You'll be subscribing to Proline TV, where you'll be able to watch the Playbook Against the Spread podcast weekly, and also other podcasts from other renowned sports handicappers as well, all available here at Proline TV. If you do just that, we'll really, really appreciate it. And as we get into the show today, I want to welcome a very special guest, if I may, a good friend of mine from Las Vegas, a former, if you will, winner of the championship of the NFL. What was it when you won it? Is it still the Westgate when you won it, Brady?
I was actually, Mark, the very last Hilton contest winner.
Okay, there you go.
Right before it became
2011.
LVH. Yeah.
Right, yeah.
Yeah, well, Brady won the Hilton
Is that
contest.
Sanssouci?
Yes,
Yes.
Sanssouci.
Yes, it was. But that's not all Brady is an expert at. He's also a premier golf handicapping analyst, and he's doing shows with us here at Proline TV. Brady, I want to welcome you to the show, tell you thank you very much. You're doing a great job on the show, and I hope that you do real well this weekend on the golf scene as well.
Thank you very much. Yeah, it was a while back that you called yourself and, excuse me, Mr. Feist, about this project you were working on, and I really appreciate the opportunity. And Greg has been doing a super job in producing these shows, and the golf conversation is something I look forward to every week. And we've had a really nice start to the season. We kicked off episode number 1 with a winner in Hideki Matsuyama in Kapalua, Maui. And then a few weeks later, got another winner with Harris English, 110-1 at Torrey Pines. And then Ludwig Oberg at Torrey Pines a couple weeks later. So, expect a drought here for many weeks, guys, because I got real hot out of the gate. But
you mean the law of averages drought, Brady, is what you're saying?
Right. Maybe we'll get hot in time again for the Masters. So,
Let's put it this way.
I mean, it's not easy
Brady.
to pick a winner out of all these players every week. Is that what you're trying to say?
I was going to say, Brady, 110-1 keeps you in action for about 2.5 tours.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
That'll pay the bills for a minute.
Yeah.
It's kind of like that Hilton Super Contest win,
Yeah.
I'm ahead of the game for a minute.
Yeah.
Well, that's what's great about handicapping in sports like, especially golf, but in sports like NASCAR, you have that as well. But golf is, it's so competitive now, and it's not easy. But when you do pick the winners, when you're not picking chalk, of course, Scotty Scheffler, Rory McIlroy, and the such, like Brady did with Harris English, you can hit these really big numbers, and there's no other sport that you can really do that like this. So that's why it's fun.
I want to let our listeners know out there that Brady used to be also with VSiN. He was a golf expert at VSiN, and along the way, Brady posted a lot of reports and the work that he did in handicapping each tournament. And as anybody read those, you got to know, you came to learn that nobody in this industry, in the golf industry, at least especially, checks as many boxes as Brady does when it comes to handicapping a golf tournament. Every box is checked, and every play that Brady makes or likes, there's a reason why. And it's always a good reason why. So Brady, I appreciate the homework that you put into your work, and it does show in the results for sure.
I would like to
Yeah.
ask you a question of Brady on golf betting. There's years ago, it was simply you went in and tried to pick the winner. And now there's a lot of options, like there is in every sport now, with all the books opened and stuff around the country, where you can go in and bet a player to be in the top 5, top 10, top 20. And some places actually offer matchups where you can play this golfer against that golfer. In your opinion, what is the best approach? And it's hard to pick a winner and get the 110 guy. I mean, you can have your long shot picks every week and you might hit some of them. And neither you or I like to play chalk very much. But when you're looking at the field and there's a top 5, top 10, top 20, and the individual matchups against each other, what do you prefer?
Yeah, those are actually the 3 different ways I pretty much play each and every golf tournament, Jim. And there are even numerous ways beyond that. I mean, that's one of the reasons I believe golf betting has been one of the fastest growing sports to bet on in the last, 5, 10, 20 years, because there's so many different ways to get an action. And like Greg was alluding to, it's kind of like a 4-day lottery. You might, over the course of 4 days, you might hit a ticket that's 110 to 1 rather than, waiting an entire 5 or 6 months for a Super Bowl champion or a World Series. You've got a mini season every week with a possible 30, 40, 80 to 1 winner. But the outrights, that's where all the glory is. That's, where, hey, I hit Matsuyama and it's fun to, say you did that and everything. But that's actually the market where I risk the fewest amount of dollars, because it's the biggest long shot. It's the biggest needle in a haystack. It's where the book has the highest hold. You might have some sports books where they hold 40% of that futures market. So it's a very difficult and, like I said, it's really fun. There's nothing better than a Sunday sweat when you've got a guy, coming down the stretch, trying to win the thing. But I will typically put 2.5 or 3 or maybe even 4 times as much risk on that same player to finish top 20. And certainly the odds aren't as good. If you've got a guy that's 30 to 1 to win the golf tournament, to finish top 20, he might be plus 175 or 2 to 1 or something like that. But obviously you have a lot better chance of that hitting. And I think, and there's less hold on the part of the sports book. And it's a little bit more conservative, certainly, but probably a better bet in the long run. And you're going to hit the proof is in the pudding. Last week, we did not hit a winner last week, but I had 3 guys of my 5 or 6 plays finish top 20. So, you and I remember I started doing that. It was many years ago where I had like 8 guys in one season finish second. And I was so tired of nailing the handicap and coming up one spot, coming up one spot short and just losing money. I said, forget this. I've got to start playing these top 10 and top 20 finish position markets. And it's made a big difference. And then beyond that, I'll bet a full unit. My greatest amount of risk will be on head-to-head matchups. That's where I was
going to just say that, Brady, because the thing with the head-to-head matchups, it's like playing a competitive baseball game with the money line, minus 130, plus 110.
Absolutely.
The difference is you've only got to handicap 2 golfers. The difference in a baseball game, you don't have to worry what a second baseman does. You just have to wonder how those 2 guys do. Is the course suited for them, their strengths and their weaknesses? So you're basically playing a competitively priced baseball game, but there are less factors that you have to worry about as far as being random occurrences.
And that's where checking the boxes works in Brady's favor as well, Andy, as you mentioned that. When he does head-to-heads, I'm sure a lot of that work comes out of those checking the box factors.
Yeah, a lot of times I end up, on the same guys that I bet for an outright or a top 20, I'll land on them in a head-to-head matchup. It just depends on, what matchup the odds maker is pairing them with. These are fictional matchups. It's not necessarily a true competitive matchup on the golf course, just something the odds maker has put up. And like Andy says, associated a price with it. But, in that case, you're in a lot of ways just handicapping the Steelers versus the Patriots. And there's a money line, or like Andy says, a baseball game. the hold percentage on the books part is only about 4%, again, compared to the outright market where it might be as high as 40%. So that's your best chance to win. It's almost a 50-50 shot. You have a lot more positive EV there than you do in the outright market. So very little risk in the outright market, 2 or 3, 4 times that amount of risk in the top 20 finish market. And then a full, my greatest amount of risk in the head-to-head matchups. And I typically don't do a lot of golf bets outside of those markets. There's a, top nationality market and top former champion market and, to make or miss the cut markets. And there's all kinds of stuff you can do. But typically I stick to those 3 areas.
And which tournaments, Brady, do you find that the Euros fare best in when it comes to mixing and going up head-to-head with the teams, the players from America?
Well, they do typically very well in the British Open. When you have elements, they do pretty well here on the Florida swing where we are right now. We see a lot of former British Open champions win these Florida events. We see a lot of Australians win at Bay Hill where they are this week for the Arnold Palmer. I think it all comes down to the fact that, a lot of these guys or a lot of these tournaments are affected by wind. And those guys are just more well-versed. The Australians grow up playing in the wind and the Europeans more so than I believe the Americans do. Now, there are like a lot of Americans that, or not necessarily Americans, but guys that played here at UNLV. We get windy oftentimes in Las Vegas, or guys that come from Texas are often very good wind players. Ricky Fowler is a great wind player, grew up in a windy area of California. So, a lot of times when you deal with those elements, those favor the Europeans. The Scottish Open, which they now have as a regular event on the PGA Tour the week prior to the Open Championship. And then, you've got, we talked about it before the program, Ludvig Åberg from Sweden, who played college golf here in America, in Texas. But, you get these guys, Tommy Fleetwood. I mean, there's tremendous Europe, Rory McIlroy, right? Shane Lowry. The list goes on and on. And the Ryder Cup is a wonderful thing where we see, the best of the Americans against the best of the Europeans. And it seems like whoever has the home game tends to win that thing. But, it's the Americans have dominated the majors for a while now, but it kind of ebbs and flows. For many years, it was the Europeans winning, 8 out of 10 majors or something. And now with Scotty Scheffler, probably a big reason why it's flipped the script a little bit.
We're visiting with Brady Kannon, former, if you will, Hilton Las Vegas football champion, and also doing a podcast here on Proline TV every week with Greg DePalma, our extraordinary producer, if you will. Brady, I'm going to really want to thank you for visiting us here on the show here. It's really, really wonderful talking with you again, catching up with you. A lot of great insight, and as our listeners will come to learn to know, nobody does their homework more than Brady Kannon. I know that for sure when it comes to golf, and if you won the Hilton contest, it probably has to hold true as well.
Well, I thank you for the high praise. It means a lot coming from someone like you, Mark, and it's an honor to be here with all of you, stalwarts in the industry.
Thank you, Brady, very, very much. We appreciate that, and keep up the good work, if you will, okay?
Thank you.
That was Brady Kannon joining us. He joins Greg DePalma every week here on Proline TV as they go over the weekly big golf card each and every week. You want to check that out. Put a few extra dollars in your pocket. There's a lot of value to be found, as Brady just explained to you, when it comes to handicapping the golf scene. And as I mentioned, you're tuned into Proline TV, where we'll share with you each and every day something new in the world of sports. If you want to add to your sports handicapping arsenal, you're at the right place to do just that. And with that, guys, before we move on to the card here, let's get into a little bit of a college basketball review, if you will. Now, Jim, I know you're not is it college basketball or NBA your forte? You got to remind me.
It's college basketball.
There we go. Good. We got him here. We dropped one, and we're keeping that.
It's strange. I don't want to eat up any time, but I'm not a big fan of the NBA. But as crazy as this sounds, my record in the NBA is remarkable. Over 2-1 this year, with over almost 70 plays. And I don't like the sport because of all the nonsense with the load management and not knowing who's going to play. But somehow this year, whatever I'm doing, it's working. So I can't explain it. We do work it, but it's not a sport I like to watch. But I like college basketball much better. I'm doing well in that, but actually better in the NBA, which is a sport I don't like. So
Well, that's what we're going to hit on is the NBA here, Jim. And I want to let our listeners know that you and Greg are doing previews on the college basketball conference tournaments right now. And that's really a must-have if you want to check those out. Greg DePalma, Jim Feist, previewing each and every one of the college basketball conference tournaments. Beginning next week here on the Playbook Against the Spread podcast, we will dip our toe into the waters as we get closer and closer to the finals of those particular tournaments. So with that, I'm going to let you just listen in, if you will, if you want to add to your repertoire, Jim, if you will. I don't think I have to do that. We have to ask what you're doing right. But Andy, I want to ask you about the NBA basketball season that's happening here right now. And if I ask you who is the best team in the NBA right now as we speak, what would your answer be?
Well, it comes down to, I think, the two teams that have fashioned the best records because they've both been really consistent throughout the entire season. That's Oklahoma City and Cleveland. They both got a little bit of experience last year in the playoffs. I like the roster of Oklahoma City. The fact that Holmgren is back in there now, I think, gives them a little bit of an edge. So they deserve to be the two favorites. I haven't seen it, but I wouldn't be surprised, given the overall structure of the NBA this year, if and South Point does this a lot. South Point might put up a proposition, and maybe they usually put 3 options in there versus the field. So I wouldn't be surprised, and it would probably be close to relatively close to a competitive or pick a matchup. Cleveland, Boston, OKC against the field.
Well, I agree with that. Those look like the top 3 premier teams in the NBA. All you need to do is look at the differential, the point scoring differential in the league, and you'll find Oklahoma City number 1, 12.6 net point differential, and Cleveland number 2 at 11.6 net differential. And if you take a look at both of these teams, they both rank also in the top 3 in the league in turnover margin. And that's really a characteristic of all good teams in all sports, turning the ball, making errors, so forth and whatnot. And these two teams simply do it just about as well as anybody does in the NBA so far this season. I'm going to give the edge to the Cavaliers here, though, right now, not because I'm from Cleveland, but largely because of their body of work and what they've done so far this basketball season here. You're talking about a Cavs team that leads the NBA in scoring. They're number 2 in shooting offensive percentage and number 4 in defensive field goal percentage. So if I had to cast my vote one way or another, it would probably be them. And Greg, are you following the NBA, or are you just going knee deep with Jim into the college basketball?
Oh, it's all college basketball.
Yes,
I'm right
I
there
sort of
with
figured
Jim.
so.
Yeah, and I don't know, honestly, if you're doing college basketball, especially at this time of the year, and you're doing other things, I don't know how it takes up all of your time. It is just so, especially all these other tournaments that are taking place this week. I mean, this isn't just about the SECs of the world. You've got the Horizons and,
30
League.
32 conference tournaments. 32. That's incredible.
Are you getting any sleep, Jim? Are you getting any sleep with these tournaments going on right now?
I'm actually borrowing hours from next year.
Oh, boy. I like that. In advance,
I get a couple extra hours from 2026.
Nice.
It's hard to keep up with.
Very nice. All right, guys, before we switch it over to a little bit of an early football preview here, Andy, I got to ask you this question before we get out of here. The Eastern Conference, the Western Conference, this sort of jumped off the page to me, and tell me if by the way I deduce this is correct or not. But if you take a look at the top 10 teams right now that are seeded for the playoffs from each of these conferences here, every team, if you will, in the Western Conference has a winning record. And over in the East, only 6 teams have a winning record. Do you think that's a substantial edge for the Western Conference over the Eastern Conference when it comes to be playoffs and especially the finals?
Yes and no. And by that, I mean, take a look at the difference between the top team, Oklahoma City, and the number 2 seed, which I believe is currently the Lakers. There's an 11-game difference between what OKC has won with their 50 games and with what the Lakers have won, which I believe they are one of 2 teams, along with Denver, who have won only 39 games. So there's a huge gap there, but that would normally suggest that OKC has a better chance of advancing because, at least based on records, other things obviously come into play as well, they have a huge advantage. Now, that difference is a little bit different in the East, where Cleveland is up by, I believe it's 8 games on the 2nd seed Boston. The Knicks are a few games behind that, but you've got a few teams in the Eastern Conference that have, well, actually, I think it's those 3 teams have at least 40 wins or more. So I'm not going to throw the Knicks in there because that's only one more than the 39 that follows the Thunder in the West. So I would think that it's going to be very competitive. You do make a point about the number of teams with winning records, and of course you said 6 teams in the West. So you're basically taking a look at the top 6 seeds, and 7, 8, 9, and 10 are going to be in that playoff round to determine
from the East, yes,
from the East, yeah, are going to be in that playoff round. So you'd have to think that at the top, the Eastern Conference might have a better advantage because their teams at the top are a little bit closer bunched than are the top teams in the West. So it's really hard to say that either conference has an edge. Of course, we still have we got maybe 18, 20 games left before the playoffs start in the middle part of April. So I would say that it's the balance in the West is 2 through the rest of the playoff teams. The balance in the East is more seeds 4 through 10.
Well, I do know that if Tony Mejia were with us right now at the moment, I'm sure his vote would be cast for Oklahoma City. I know he's a big proponent of the Thunder thus far this basketball season, and for a lot of the right reasons.
I think I see Tony, don't we?
I see him.
Tony, are you with us?
Yeah,
I see him.
Oh, there we go. All right, good. I don't know if you caught.
How much weight do you put on this resurgence of the Warriors and the Lakers after the current trade?
Yeah, look, I would say that you throw out the records right now. Don't worry about them. Worry about what you've seen over the last 10 to 20 games. I mean, it's surprising. Portland is 14-6 over their last 20. They're just as big a threat as Phoenix is to capitalize on Dallas's likely demise.
And where did that come from, Tony? Portland. Why did they all of a sudden wake up? What happened there?
Chauncey Billups got his rotations correct. Some growing up from guys like Scoot Henderson, and Kamara is a good 2-way player. I mean, they've just had guys play better and mature.
Nice.
Play 2-way basketball. That's really, they had a really strong January, and it kicked in from there. But yeah, I mean, you've got Jimmy Butler infused Golden State is 9-1 in their last 10. You're seeing Luka Doncic figure some stuff out, and the Lakers are suddenly annihilating teams. So yeah, really, you can basically say, and I understand the frustrations with the NBA over the first few months. I've had them too, even though that's my league. You can hop in now, even after March Madness. Just keep an eye on what's going on in March and be fine for the playoffs. But what's interesting is there's a lot of teams tanking in the East and in the West now by the Luka trade and the Kyrie Irving injury. You now have Dallas probably bowing out, which will open the door at number 10 for Phoenix or Portland to sneak in there for that final play-in.
Let me ask you this, Tony. Right now, you mentioned Portland has sort of come out of nowhere to put themselves in the position for the playoffs. Mm-hmm. Is there any other team right now that you think might come from being out of the playoffs into the playoffs, a team to watch moving forward?
No, because San Antonio lost Wembanyama. That would have been my answer.
Yes.
So they're kind of out. It's really going to be and Phoenix had a really big comeback win over the Clippers last night at home. I mean, that's really a team Budenholzer struggled with giving up on players and really frustrated in his first year in Phoenix. So if it's not them, it'll be Portland because Dallas has, I believe, a 4-game cushion, but it's tough to see them holding on with Anthony Davis not likely coming back. Lively and Gafford, the centers, one might come back, but it'll be a struggle to get them back in the flow of things. And Anthony Davis, I think we've seen the last of him. They'll exercise caution.
Awesome. You're tuned in to Mark Lawrence podcast from Playbook, heard exclusively here on ProLine TV. And as we promised earlier on, we're going to be touching about the upcoming football season. We just had the NFL Combine, wrapped everything up. A lot going on in the world of college football. Talking about the National Football League, Andy, what's going on with the franchise tags? Why were there only two players tagged this year? There were 8 players tagged last year, and there's been an average of almost 7 since the inception of the franchise tag. What's going on in the National Football League that way?
I'm really not quite sure. I mean, T. Higgins, I think, was one that a lot of people expected, and of course that happened. And I think Dallas had the other franchise tag, and maybe it's just negotiations as far as what the agents now think the players can get. Maybe they're more willing to explore options outside of the franchise tag, or maybe there are a lot more behind-the-scenes negotiations that basically suggest to the teams that they'll be able to reach contract agreements. But I really can't explain it. I don't follow it that closely as to the contract status of players, but I would think that that's got a lot to do with it.
Okay, very good. Greg, any idea about why only 2 players that were tagged thus far this football season in the NFL?
Specific reasons? No, I just think it's just one of those years, because last year they had 8. So I don't think it's anything other than that. It's just one of those years. Matter of fact, I think you go back about 13 years when they had 18, if you could believe that. So I don't know if we're ever going to get back to those days. But yeah, I just think it's just one of those deals. And then to tell you the truth, I think T. Higgins is going to wind up signing a long-term deal. That's all this is. I think he knows it's in his best interest, because he's banged up all the time. And I mean, he'd be really, really gambling with his career and his finances if he were to try to play tough, and just because Cincinnati could just sign him again to a tag next year. And sure, it'd be nice for 2 years, but then what happens if he gets injured long term? Then there goes his long-term deal. So I think it makes a lot of sense for Higgins to sign the long-term deal. Chase is going to get the long-term deal. And then if they can just hold on to Trey Hendrickson, they'll be in really good shape, because those are 3-star players, including Joe Burrow. And I think I think you could win with that. You can afford 4 guys, and then, the rest is up to your draft.
Do they have
Greg,
any
is it? I was going to just ask Greg.
Their defense there, Greg?
What's that?
The defense was the big problem.
Oh, yeah. And remember, their new head coach, their new defensive coordinator is Notre Dame's defensive coordinator, the one that did such a great job, Al Golden, nearly taking Notre Dame to the national championship. So yeah, you would, and look, remember, even when they got rid of their defensive coordinator, who's now with the Colts, it was the first time they ever had this bad of a year. And the year before wasn't very good either. A lot of it had to do with they had 2 really good safeties that had worked together, Von Bell and Jesse Bates, and they had worked together for so long together. And then Bates gets a new deal, leaves. Bell is basically also left, and then he's trying to bring in new guys. And the secondary was a disaster in 2023. The entire team was a disaster defensively in 2024. So they've moved on to a new guy, but there were still decent pieces on the team. So it's not like they're an off season away from adding a few pieces, doing good in the draft, and then being more than capable of being a realistic Super Bowl contender this season.
I think we're in
Greg,
TBD mode with them, though.
Greg, I was going to ask, don't they have until like July something for those who are under the franchise tag, in this case Higgins and then the kid from Dallas, to reach a contract extension? Otherwise, they have to go with the franchise tag for the entire season.
Yep, they got till July 15th.
From what I read, Higgins could still be traded. So if there are teams like
Sure.
New England that want him as a number 1, they could trade for him. And if it is Higgins staying put, I don't think they can afford all 3 because they were cheap. So Hendrickson might be the odd man out, and that's why I said it's a TBD with Cincinnati and that defense. Because if they lose Hendrickson, they're starting from scratch, as far as I'm concerned, without one of the league's best pass rushers. So
yeah, I mean, you bring up a good point.
Al Golden before he even gets a chance to really dive in there.
Yeah, this is going to be the make or break for the Bengals, because Tony brings up a good point, because history tells you that Cincinnati is not going to max up their cap space because they don't normally go down that road. But if they allow either Higgins or Hendrickson to leave, Joe Burrow is just not going to be happy. And I'm sorry, but if you make Joe Burrow an unhappy guy, that's the worst thing you can for your franchise. And maybe they're okay with that because that's how they've done business as long as we can remember, which is why Tony brought this up. But I'm just going with, look, I do believe, if anything, it will be Hendrickson, because I do think they're going to figure out a way to bring back Higgins and Chase, because if they anger Burrow, at least they want to keep him happy offensively. So I do see that scenario happening. But if they feel like they can't afford Hendrickson as well, they're not going with Super Bowl, and I don't think that's going to go very well with Joe Burrow.
They'd rather see him be annoyed at the end of games, scoring 40 points and that not being enough.
There have been players in the NFL now, like Myles Garrett and Joe Burrow, that have said, I don't want to waste my career playing for teams that don't give a damn about winning. And they want to go to a team that wants to try to win at least. And of course, Cincinnati's been a rather frugal franchise for a long time. And of course, Cleveland, we know what's wrong with them. But, these guys have careers, and they're short careers, and they want to try to win. And Burrow's, he's arguably one of the top 2 or 3 quarterbacks in the league. I certainly would put him right up there at number 1 or 2.
Quick NFL hits from the breaking news stuff. It looks like the Raiders are keeping Max Crosby 3 years, $105 million extension. So that's a big piece for them. And news out of Seattle, Tyler Lockett released, and maybe 30 minutes later, DK Metcalf requesting a deal. So they're keeping Geno Smith for this season, but outside of Smith and Jigma, it's going to be hard for him to have receivers that he trusts out there if Metcalf does get dealt.
I also heard that Minshew will be released by the Raiders.
I heard that he was, yes.
Yeah.
And by the way, I heard that rumor about Philly, Garrett.
Oh, Garrett, yeah.
The league, first of all, 29 other teams or 25 other teams will revolt if the Cleveland Browns are stupid enough to trade Myles Garrett to the Eagles. And the Eagles don't even have a first-round pick anywhere near deserving of Myles Garrett. So
Greg, that's the same franchise that signed a 27.
I know.
Yep.
For 300.
But it didn't bother the other fan base.
Yeah, they're capable of doing anything.
That's what I'm saying. It didn't bother the rest of the. It just killed their own. But they do this. They're killing the rest of the league by putting Myles Garrett on the Eagles and not getting like a top 10 first-round draft pick or a top 15 draft pick in return. That would be idiotic.
Maybe they want him out of the AFC. They don't want to have to go up against him.
I tell you what, if they're going to get a late first-round draft pick, they better get about 3 of them.
Well, this is a perfect segue, guys, talking about the National Football League on into college football, where the NFL Combine just wrapped up last week. And, there were winners and there were losers. We're going to talk a little bit about that here on the show as we move forward here. But
I have to, I'm sorry, but I have to go.
All right, Jimmy.
Run to my show, but I enjoyed this segment, and thank you, and good seeing you guys again, and have a great show.
We'll look forward to catching up with you next week.
Jim.
Thank you.
Okay, bye-bye.
Thanks, Jim.
As I was mentioning, guys, now the NFL Combine is over, and it was been reported that Travis Hunter, the Heisman Trophy winner, is the best prospect in the National Football League draft. The only question about him is what position is he going to play in the NFL? And he said that on record that if he was forced to choose a position as a defensive back or a wide receiver, he would choose the wide receiver position. So let me ask you this, Tony. Does him being a 2-position player lessen his value in the draft, or does it help him?
I mean, versatility is always an asset. I mean, if you like Travis Hunter enough as a prospect, you'll figure out a way to maximize his ability to play both ways. And then if it comes to fruition that it's best for him to just pick one of those things. I think Greg made the money signal. I think it's also a durability factor, because the concern about Travis Hunter is not whether he can cover, it's whether he can tackle. And if you get a 230-pound DK Metcalf or Deebo Samuel running you over, and all of a sudden you're out for 3 weeks to a month, that wouldn't be ideal. So yeah, we'll see what happens with him. It's looking like he'll be a top 3 pick regardless.
Andy, winners and losers out of this combine, anything jumped out to you that was a bit of a surprise or perhaps a major disappointment?
I watched a lot of the combines, and there were a number. I think some of the quarterbacks that we hadn't been considering as being top for first-round choices may have improved themselves a little bit. I'm trying to remember of a couple of ones in particular. I know Ewers impressed some, even though he was banged up a little bit, and a couple of the others that don't come to mind immediately. But it seemed to be a little bit more surprising because this was considered to be one of the weaker quarterback classes coming out, but that doesn't mean there won't be some capable, likely backups that have the possibility of perhaps being starters at some point down the road. So I think I was surprised that maybe more quarterbacks' names came into the discussion, not necessarily for first round, but possibly second or third rounds.
Well, Greg, I know you're working with our lads, and they do a terrific job when it comes to handicapping the National Football League draft. And the combine goes a long, long way towards putting player evaluations together that way. What did our lads do, or what will they do about the performance of Will Howard and Jackson Dart? Will Howard was unbelievably not the Will Howard we saw that won a national championship. He was missing guys wide open. What do you think happens at our lads when it comes to rating Will Howard in the National Football League draft?
Knowing those scouts, I don't think they're gonna. I think if they have a specific grade on Howard, which I kind of feel I know what they have, then it's not going to matter. And I think they believe he's a second round guy, and I think that's where they'll stick. Jackson Dart, on the other hand, is a guy that our top two scouts are not enamored with, even before the combine. So that's just going to make it even more so that was like almost proof that he has a lot of little chinks in the armor that might slip him down to the third round. But it all takes one GM that is desperate for him, and he could still land in the second.
It was Shadir Sanders from Colorado who came to Howard's side, backing him up for his performance or his questionable performance when he made the statement, "I don't understand y'all hating on Howard. He just won a natty. It's hard to throw to wide receivers that you don't know. Everyone runs different routes."
Yeah.
Do you think that was the case in this case, Tony, about his poor performance? The fact that he wasn't ready for it, or is more accustomed to the players that he had at Ohio State that he was playing with every day?
Yeah, I didn't see it. I only heard about it, that he really disappointed. And again, to me, not to dodge the question, but it would be very surprising if there's only two quarterbacks taken in that first round. I don't remember the last time that's happened. To take a quick look, I'm pretty sure we've had at least three over the last 5 to 10 years. But
yeah, I think we're most likely to see the over/under quarterbacks in the first round right at 2. I'm going to imagine
2.5, right? Because
is it 2.5?
Flip in the third.
Well, I don't know.
But even then, that's still low from what we've seen over the last few seasons.
Well, also keep in mind that Howard and Dart were the two guys, if anybody thought would sneak into the first round.
Yeah.
And now maybe that, yeah. So yeah, but look, sometimes we get too carried away with the combine. The fact of the matter is, did anybody watch Will Howard in these playoffs? How did he look?
Right.
Isn't that the most important thing? Come on.
No, absolutely. I agree with you on that. I mean, we're prisoners of the moment in that regard. And I think teams are privy to getting these guys into a meeting room where they can impress with their knowledge and their moxie. I think that's what happened with a number of quarterbacks this past year. Sean Payton being impressed by Mo Nix coming to mind as the chief example of that.
This looks like it's going to be a pretty strong draft for the running backs who are making a resurgence, if you will. Just 3 years ago, I didn't think they were talking about nobody even being drafted in the first 3 rounds, a running back that way. And it looks like we're going to have an abundance of players here this year. And the one running back that surprised me, or disappointed, I would say, was Cam Scatterbo from Arizona State. He didn't even run in a 40-yard dash. He said he had a hamstring. Mm-hmm. And they're really concerned about his lack of speed. I'm sure that's going to drop him down maybe to the mid-round. But do you know anything at all, Andy, about the running back from Virginia Tech, Brashel Luton, I believe it's pronounced? He ran a 4.32 40. He went 40.5 in the vertical jump, the best of all the running backs. Do you think that could possibly help him maybe even get himself into the first round of the National Football League draft?
Yeah, I'm probably not as familiar with him as Greg probably is as far as seeing a lot of game films, but certainly I would have to think that a lot of the scouts who may not have had him high on their lists or even on their radar will be going back and looking at a lot of Virginia Tech games to sort of find out if his performances match what he did in the combine, because certainly he put up those very good numbers. And, there are a number of running backs each year that aren't all that highly thought of and maybe fall down maybe late first round, or well, you're probably highly thought of if you're even late first round, but into some of the middle rounds, let's say even rounds 2 through 4, that end up making it in the NFL, often because of the fact that they drew some attention because of their combine performance.
Well, Greg, wide receivers are really highly sought after, and I don't know, Tony, have you seen? Is that still the position of the player position that'll be drafted most this year? The wide receivers, I would guess, in the draft.
I mean, we'll see, but from what I saw on the mocks, Ohio State's Ibuka passed Arizona's T-Mac, Tedero McMillan, and McMillan was the consensus #1 wide receiver most of the season. So I don't. The chatter is that he's slipped somehow. Running back wise, Tootin was really good until he got banged up, probably around mid-October, and then he was a game-time decision for Virginia Tech. Him and Drones, the quarterback, for I think the last 4 to 5 weeks. But he's a physical specimen. I saw Omarion Hampton from North Carolina had a really nice combine, and he should be in that mix. Obviously Genty's going to be the #1 guy, but a lot of running backs stood out. Quinshawn Judkins from Ohio State, who put up big numbers at Ole Miss before he transferred, and obviously just won a natty. He did well too. So we'll see. Obviously, wide receivers are prioritized over running backs in 2025 NFL football. But I think it's a very deep running back class, and we'll see who ends up standing out among receivers.
Greg, last year Xavier Worthy ran the fastest 40 in the combine, and this year Matthew Golden from Texas did the same thing. There's another wide receiver from Texas, Isaiah Bond, who was bragging about the fact that he would claim the world record.
Yeah,
but he ran a 4.39. I don't know.
Oh, that's fast.
It is fast,
but not fast as fast as he was saying.
Yes, for what he was promising, I guess it's a little bit disappointing. So what I'm getting at here is, where does it really hurt or help Bond? A 4.39 is nice, but it wasn't what he proclaimed to be. And Golden from Texas here, do you think these two wide receivers are first-round draft picks?
Well, Golden is.
Yeah.
Golden is a guy that I know our scouts have been very high on from the very first mock draft we did about a month ago, which actually surprised me because he didn't put up big numbers, but that doesn't necessarily mean everything. I don't know. I don't think he's a worthy myself. I think he's a good player. He's obviously very fast, and you get him on the right team with Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes, and he'll have a nice career. But that's the thing. I don't think he's one of those receivers that will elevate a team. I think he's one of those receivers that's fast, and if you're a good team, you got good quarterbacks, good coaches, he could help your team. But he's not going to be one of these guys like. And again, I see where Tony's coming at, because we hear this all the time when a specific player at a position like McMillan is the #1 receiver, and another guy all of a sudden, the longer you go in this process, you start nitpicking and oh yeah, I like that guy actually maybe better than this one. Ibuka is a nice player, but I'm not even sure Ibuka is a true #1. Ibuka is more of a good slot. He's you're gonna move the chains with him. He's got the great balance and the footwork and hands and all that stuff. But McMillan, he's like a true #1 star potential player, which is the reason he's been top 5 discussion the entire offseason. So I think it's highly doubtful that Ibuka will end up ahead of McMillan, because I think McMillan is still a guy that people think could even go to the Patriots at #3. Nobody thinks Ibuka could go that high.
And just remember, this is smokescreen season, so
yeah,
that's absolutely true. I mean, I like Ibuka a lot. I think he proved with multiple guys at Ohio State that you get him the ball, but he's willing to block and adhere to his role. So I think he's a consummate pro. But I definitely agree with you, Greg. From what I saw, especially early in the season, McMillan looked like a legit #1 wide receiving prospect in this draft. I mean, 6'5", a little thin, but I mean, just a true #1, like you said.
And that's why if you can go to the Patriots have had all sorts of bad first round wide receiver luck. But if they can finally get a guy, and especially at Drake May's development, that's the whole idea and the reason why it makes a lot of sense, because it doesn't look like an offensive lineman who was really the Patriots' number one issue is valued at number 3. Unless the Patriots want to move down a few spots and grab an offensive lineman, that's fine. But they might just go in another direction altogether, unless they think that McMillan is worthy of the 3rd pick. And then you match him up with Drake May for the next 5 or 6 years.
What's the Abdul Carter news that you've heard? Because obviously he has the injury, but I mean his agent still says he should be the number 1 pick. You agree with that?
I don't think the injury is going to do anything. So it's really all up to Tennessee and whether or not. Well, first of all, are they going to be dumb enough to draft a quarterback at number 1, or 2? If
Trade
they
down,
go,
maybe.
Yeah, if they don't, which they probably shouldn't, it's going to be between Hunter and Carter. And the thing is, you were talking before, Mark, about Hunter. If Hunter was not a 2-sport star, one of those guys, he would not be the first pick of the draft. It's the fact that he is such a special player that he can do. Yeah, that's why because if he was just a corner, he would be like tied with Will Johnson for the top cornerback in the draft, which would be somewhere in the top 10. Or if he was a receiver, well, he'd probably be up there with Ted McMillan, and Ibuka. But he would not be the standalone guy that can do both things. But I think it's going to be between Hunter and Carter, who goes to Tennessee at number 1.
Andy, number 2, Cleveland Browns. They have a big need for quarterback. I don't know what they're going to do as far as possible trades go. Would they go for Shadir Sanders at number 2, or possibly Cam Ward, as desperate as Cleveland is at that position right now?
It's interesting because I heard some talk 3-4 days ago you were talking about Drake May and the Patriots, that there was some talk that the Patriots are very, very high on the backup Milton, that they may entertain some offers for Drake May. So I don't know how valid those rumors are, if it's part of that smokescreen effort or just sort of to get some sort of buzz going.
No way.
But you don't think so?
No.
It is,
I'm a
it is
Michigan
Cleveland
fan.
we're talking about.
I'm a Michigan fan.
I
know who Joe Milton is.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
No.
Joe
I don't know,
Milton's been fooling people in Tennessee and Michigan.
Yeah.
No.
He's an amazing physical. I mean, he
Athlete,
probably
yes,
can throw the ball furthest of anybody in the
He's
world.
a project.
Yeah.
But yes, and he looked great. Week 18, he had a really nice game. Hey, listen, this is interesting because I went to look thinking whether Abdul Carter was number 1, and after the combine, obviously everyone's saying Cam Ward clearly over Shadur Sanders. Cam Ward is minus 250 at DraftKings to be the number 1 pick, which I guess would say that since maybe Tennessee takes him, but then you have Cleveland or New York potentially wanting to trade up to beat one another out for his services. So Cam Ward minus 250 and Carter's at plus 190 with Travis Hunter 3rd at plus 750 to be the first pick selected.
I'm hearing those rumors too about, well, maybe they'll have they'll trade back and have someone trade up to get one of these quarterbacks, and they've thrown the Jets into this mix. And I'm like, if the Jets are stupid enough to trade up to get one of these quarterbacks, I think that's it.
From Colorado, Greg.
I think that's it. I think that'll be the last straw, because it would be the most idiotic thing any general manager can do in this draft is trade up to get one of these guys. I mean, it can't be real. It just can't. They're all seeing the same tape we are. These guys are not that talented to be top 5 picks, let alone to trade up into the top. Because you know what you got to give up to get one of these guys. That means you have to give up your first round pick next year. That's lunacy.
Yeah, none of them seem to be what you would call a franchise quarterback.
No. Unless you land with the right guy. You got to be lucky. You got to land with Andy Reid, or you got to let Sean Payton, and those guys are booked. So,
all right, guys, let's put the combine in the rear view mirror now. I'm going to hand it off to Greg DePalma for his take on the high 5 segment here on the show. And Greg, you've got the ball.
All right, sounds good. So before we get into some of the latest happenings in the Coffee Club email, including potentially some of your comments, questions, things like that, let's get into some of our shorts, picks of the week, whatever you guys want to talk about here in a minute. So we're going to start with Andy. So, Andy, are you ready to go ahead and give us your short of the week?
I am. So I'll count down 3, 2, one. And I'm actually going to go with a little bit of a tip or a consideration when looking to play futures in college basketball to win the NCAA tournament. Most of the values are pretty much already gone by this point. We know the top teams. We know the teams that are going to be highly seeded. A lot of those mock brackets already have the top 16, probably going to have at least 14 of them correct. And that is wait until Selection Sunday and the following day when the odds come out, because at that point, you're going to know, first of all, every team's path to the Final Four in the championship. And more importantly, a lot of teams, because of that path, maybe end up providing a lot more value, or at least somewhat more value at that point than they do today, because of perhaps the top 2 or 3 teams in their region that they'd have to get through. So I would say if you haven't made a pick, except maybe on something right now that's 50 to 1 or longer that you feel is very comfortable going to make the field, you might do very well to wait until Selection Sunday. Take that evening to chart things out and get into action Monday or Tuesday.
Perfect, Andy. Excellent job. And I agree, because that's, as you know, we talked about this the last couple of weeks. I like to get these bargains. And I was thinking about the same thing. It's like, yeah, you know what? We're only about a week or so away now. Maybe I'm just better off trying to find out who they're playing. And then you might even be in a situation, if you take teams, like I was even thinking about BYU, and then they go out and beat Iowa State. And I'm like, wait a second, wow, they're 70 to 1. I wonder if that win is going to knock them down enough that I'm going to be impatient that I need to go ahead and take them now. But but really, if you think about it, what's the big deal between 70 to 1 to 50 to 1? I know it's a lot, but it's really 50 to 1 is still a huge number, even if you lose that much.
One other thing I could add to that also is that a lot of people like to have multiple teams to win the championship. Okay,
oh, yeah.
Maybe 4 to 6 teams. Well, yeah. What you can do right now by waiting is you don't want to have 3 or 4 of those teams ending up in the same region. That's another reason why you want to wait until you know what the matchups are, because then I historically, I'll look to take 2 teams in a region if I haven't done much, or fill out my bracket or my portfolio rather with 8 teams, hopefully 2 from each region. And you can manage that once you know what the team's paths are. And maybe sometimes you'll find a team that you're on the borderline of thinking that, hey, their path is a little bit easier than perhaps I would have expected. Maybe you can do that. So yeah, you do want to avoid being stacked too much in one region.
Yeah, I have that bad luck almost every year. I look into the bracket and I'm like, you got to be kidding me. You put those teams in the same bracket. Those are all the teams I like. And then, and even like the first round matchups, you get these matchups. Oh, you got to put those teams together. And it happens every year. It's perfect point, Andy. And it's the thing, one of the things that drives me crazy sometimes about it, but it's the truth. And we're going to have all of our predictions, by the way, set up really well, because we're on Wednesday. Of course, the tournament doesn't really start until Thursday, the next day, even though you'll have, of course, the first couple of days will be on a Tuesday and a Wednesday, but we'll have our special show in 2 weeks. And we're going to have all the handicappers giving all their predictions and sleepers and all sorts of cool stuff for all the regions in the bracket. So it's going to be a lot of fun.
By the way, one other thing I like to do is also focus on the number 2 and 3 seeds, and sometimes the number 7 seeds, because those teams wouldn't play the number 1 seed in the region until the regional finals.
And by the way, these are going to be the type of tips and history trends that we're going to come up with. Because Mark, you have that one every year where you have that list that it's usually like 5 teams or 6 teams based on the formula. And if you have to be in that group. And if you are, these are the only 5 or 6 teams that are probably going to win the champion. I don't remember what that is. But it's limited to only 6 to 9 teams. And if you're not one of those teams, your chances of winning the championship are pretty bad.
Yeah, we call it the Elite 8 Elements, and it's really been really successful over the years. I believe 1 or maybe 2 of perhaps the last 20 NCAA tournaments has it not had a team that made it to the championship game or won the championship. So, but that'll be forthcoming, once we know who all these teams are. But it'll be interesting read for sure.
Yep, so that's coming out. And of course, your college basketball newsletter for the tournament, when does that come out?
Well, we're doing two a week newsletters here right now as we're speaking. We'll do those up until we get into the college basketball conference tournaments full time starting next week. So once the conference tournaments are all wrapped up, it turns exclusively to the college basketball NCAA tournament guide, followed by the Sweet 16 guide. So before we know it, guys, we're going to blink and the college basketball season is going to be wrapped up.
Let's hope not.
Let's hope
Okay. Mark, since you're on a roll, why don't you get going with your short of the week?
Okay. My short of the week, guys. You want to talk about who's the better player in the NBA, Michael Jordan or LeBron James? Well, let's hit on it, if you will. And something extraordinary just happened this week. LeBron James made his case Tuesday when he scored his 50th thousandth point in his career. That's the most in NBA history, almost more than 6,000 than Abdul-Jabbar. In his first year in the league, he averaged 20.9 points a game. 22 years later, he's averaging 24.9 points a game. That's the second lowest in his career. Almost 35 minutes a game at the age of 40. He's made it to the NBA Finals 10 times. That's 4 times more than Michael Jordan has done just that. I think the numbers are all clearly in LeBron James's favor here. He's proven his success. He's been there. He's done all that. Sorry, Michael Jordan lovers. The king has surpassed the tongue. I will back Michael Jordan. I'm changing tracks here. I'm saying LeBron James will end up being the most valuable player, number one player in NBA history.
And the fact that you're from Cleveland, we're not going to take that.
That's an interesting debate because I still go OG. I still go the old guy. And it's hard to overlook what Wilt Chamberlain did when he dominated his professional career, averaging over 50 points for an entire season, which in itself is impressive. But what's equally and doesn't get the same amount of attention, he averaged over 27 rebounds per game that same season.
That is incredible.
And then he became a league leader in assists at the end of his career.
Well, LeBron's made it 10 times to the finals, Michael 4 times. I think that's really interesting. And you look at all the minutes LeBron James plays. My goodness. The average never less than 20 points a game in his career. He's doing it again here right now, and he's 40 years old. I think sometimes if you look at durability, and you have to weigh that into the equation here as well. I was enamored with Michael Jordan, as was everybody else, but I think you have to step back and give LeBron James his due right now.
He's definitely doing to a lot of people what he did for you in terms of winning you over. I'm a Jordan GOAT guy because back when I rooted for a team, it was the Knicks, and so he terrorized my childhood. And the only athlete that I've ever been in awe of, and I've interviewed everybody in the NBA and stood with them, it was Michael Jordan when I was very young, and he was with the Wizards. He came through Orlando when I was still, I think, in college. But the guy never lost an NBA Finals. That's how you shut down that debate. 6-0. Obviously, LeBron has lost. But what they're doing at this advanced age, that's where LeBron's really, I think, trimmed that gap. And getting the 50,000 points with combined regular season and playoff scoring just proves his longevity. And the fact that he's doing it, I mean, you could make a debate that he's a top 10 guy right now at 40 years old in the league. Because you'd be hard pressed to name 9 guys having better seasons than him.
And I'm going to say he might likely even play a couple of more years with Doncic being there right now too.
Yeah, if he likes the role of being that number 2, and he seems to.
Exactly.
Again, he's never been a me guy. I mean, he's never been a Kobe or an MJ that needs to score. He's always been happy, racking up triple doubles.
And he's also been unjustly criticized for not being a me guy because he didn't take some shots that perhaps he should have. And that just shows he's thinking team.
Absolutely. It just shows Skip Bayless is a moron.
Yeah, his mindset is finding the guy that's in the best position to score the highest percentage of the score on the floor. It doesn't always have to be him. And if he sees that guy, that's where the ball is going to go.
No doubt.
Okay. Let's now end our trio of shorts with you, Tony.
All right. Well, right before I get started, we had our one of those trademark letdown situations on Tuesday night with Auburn losing, celebrating the SEC championship, and then getting housed by Texas A&M. So we had a couple of those things. Right now, there's a little lull between the regular season and conference tournaments on the majors. So maybe look out for those spots this weekend. But I will get started. We'll count it down with 3, 2, 1. Let's have a moment of silence for Doug Gottlieb's first season as a head coach at the Division I level. Green Bay went 4-28, and bowed out at 2-18 in the regular season. And after leading Oakland over the weekend in the Horizon League regular season finale, they lost in overtime and they got housed in the Horizon League first round And now I'm going to talk about the Horizon League because that's going to be my future play for this weekend. I'm going to go with the Fighting Bart Lundys and Milwaukee. And what's going to be a really tight conference tournament. You got Robert Morris won the regular season title of 15-5. Cleveland State's right there. But I like Milwaukee. I like the makeup of their roster, a bunch of transfers. It's a really veteran team. Jermichael Stillwell, one of the better rebounders in that conference. Timus Folks from Louisiana, one of the top scorers. So give me the Milwaukee Fighting Panthers to represent the Horizon League and reach the NCAA tournament.
All right. Perfect timing. And Jim and I did all 11 tournaments that were taking place between Monday and Friday show. Jim and I will be back on Friday. And then starting on Friday, Jim and I are basically going to be on the air just about every day, all the way through till the following, probably even till bracket day. Because I actually think we might be, and this is a programming message, I think it might be a good idea because I finally fixed everything. We had some technical issues with us getting hooked up with our live broadcasting with our new service. That now that we can go live, that I think it'd be a nice idea to go live and do a bracket show on Sunday night of bracket day. So, I'm sure Jim will say yes. So maybe you guys want to join us. We could talk about that. So that's something we'll definitely promote for sure in the next couple of weeks to let you know. But I say, why wait until Wednesday of that week and just, have a fun time talking about the brackets on Sunday night like a lot of other people will. So keep that in mind. And then meanwhile, let's take a look at some of the things going on this past week in the Coffee Club email that you can order. We'll have a link in the description for that. And let's see, there was something here. One came from, actually, this is a horse racing one I'm going to save for when John Hardoon's on. This is baseball related. And you have, I know that we go back to keep in mind, of course, we have two shows that are already on the channel, American League, basically a hot stove recap of the American League and the National League. And Andy and Tony are going to be back real soon because we're going to be getting closer and closer to the start of the season. So we'll have some preview videos coming out soon, including predictions and everything on the season. But there was a sports chat here with Mark on LA's 2025 luxury tax payroll of $372.2 million, which is by far the highest of every team. And talks about how the Dodgers have a staggering $1.38 billion deferred money on their active contracts. The Mets and Red Sox are the only teams even to top $50 million. Remember last college basketball season when everyone actually, that's before I get into that one. So what do you guys think about that? Because we've talked about it before. There has to be, if they're not going to have a salary cap, what other way can Major League Baseball, what can they do to try and even the playing field?
I've always said that even if they don't have a salary cap, have a salary floor. Each team has to spend a certain amount, whether it be a percentage of revenues, a percentage of TV money that's split up amongst the 30 teams, that some teams have to start spending money to at least attempt to be competitive. They may not be able to get 5 quality starting pitchers, for example, like the Dodgers would be able to if they chose to do so, but they should at least have to be in a situation where they've got to pay money to at least get, let's say 2 quality pitchers where at least they can be competitive in at least half their games, for example.
Wasn't there a time in Major League Baseball when teams had to do just that, Andy? Where they had to spend so much money? I'm maybe going back way back to Finley and some of the cheapskate owners and things like that. But was there a time, or is this just something that you think should be in the here and now?
Yeah, I'm not sure if it ever was something like that. I remember Bowie Kuhn would cancel trades because Charlie Finley was selling players and getting cash back instead of getting players and things like that, and that would be something that was very objectionable. But I don't know that they've ever had anything like a salary floor, because I could never agree. I could never see the players union, which goes back now 50, 60 years, ever agreeing to the elimination of a salary floor. If anything, they would argue for an increase in the salary floor.
Interesting.
And then here, this was from another email. One of the Coffee Club emails. Highest paid players, 15 of the 25 play either in Hollywood or the Big Apple. So those are the highest paid players.
Where the money is, right?
Yep.
Yes. And
But
of
also the
course-
cost of living is highest.
Yeah.
I don't think the cost of living, however, really affects you when 60% of what you're getting is going into the bank.
Yeah. So, and it just it's such a knife through like an open wound when I see Juan Soto with the Mets, as a Nationals fan. It's so incredible. You're the franchise that find these guys, you groom them, you get them to be what they are. You win a World Series with them, and then he turns down whatever it was at the time. I don't remember if it was a $300 or $500 million deal at the time, but that's just not good enough. And now he's making an incredible amount of money that I can't even keep count. So, and he's got to do it in the same division. I mean, seriously, you're going to backstab the organization. You got to do it in
something good from her. I mean, they got C.J. Abrams and Mackenzie Gore, so at least you were able to get some haul from him. I mean, there were some teams that give away prospects like that. And then for nobodies that don't pan out. So,
matter of fact, there are two of them. No, wait, there are three of the top 20 players making contracts that were Nationals on their World Series team that they couldn't afford. Juan Soto, Anthony Rendon, who can't stay
Bryce
healthy
Harper?
anyway,
Bryce
and
Harper?
Trey Turner.
Oh, Turner.
Yeah. Oh, is Bryce Harper in here too? Let me see.
I don't know. Was he on the championship team? I'm trying to recall.
Yes. No, he wasn't on the championship team. No,
He had
he was
left
actually
Rendon ended up being the worst contract in baseball over the last
Rendon,
20
yeah.
years.
Yeah, he was actually gone the year before that. So that was good timing.
He may have the record set, though, for highest average salary per game for games played.
Yeah, that's a shame. I mean, I'm sure,
Not
I'm
for
sure
all
he
games.
wouldn't prefer it that way.
Yeah.
I mean, he went in the tank at the plate and then he got hurt all the time.
Yeah.
All right, so that's going to wrap it up, Mark. So next week we go a week closer to the start of the official start of the college basketball 2025 NCAA tournament.
And we'll start breaking down the college basketball conference tournaments here on the Playbook ATS podcast beginning next week. So until then, I want to thank our panel of experts, Tony Mejia from PlaybookExperts.com and also Sporting News, Andy Isco from TheLogicalApproach.com, the legend himself, Jim Feist from Las Vegas, and our producer extraordinaire, Greg DePalma. Until next week, once again, this is Mark Lawrence. Remember to always remember to bet with your head, not over it, and good luck as always.